Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health with Sara Banta. I'm a busy wife, mom of 3, and an NNP certified supplement professional, but that's not all. Just announced I'm the founder of the multi-award winning 4 years in a row, the most innovative supplement company, Accelerated Health Products, a brand offering innovative natural scalar enhanced supplements to optimize your health. And this podcast is not just a source of information. We're a community. We're all here to learn and grow on our health journeys, regardless of where you are today. And this podcast is the springboard to learning, and we continue to learn together on Telegram in my free group coaching. And that's where you can ask questions. I post tips and tools every day to deepen your health and keep you motivated and moving forward. So here's what you can expect. New episodes every Monday and Wednesday with in-depth health discussions and expert guests. Hot topics that are in the news every Friday to keep things fun. And then, of course, followed up with the free group coaching on Telegram. And the details can be found on my website, SaraBantaHealth.com. Have you thought about detoxing, but you're a little worried about being hangry or having a juice cleanse or having those detox flu symptoms? Well, I've created over 10 unique, easy detox cleanse programs to help you reset your body while feeling great with no symptoms. Take the detox quiz on the website, SaraBantaHealth.com, and you can find out which one's right for you, just from the colon cleanse to get you pooping to the parasite cleanse, the candida cleanse, the liver flush cleanse, and the big one, the accelerated diet cleanse that resets your insulin resistance, your liver health, your hormones, gets you off that weight plateau. It is amazing. So you can do a cleanse, but maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe you just want to start with 1 or 2 supplements. Fill out the free supplement protocol on the website, and I will personally put together a protocol for you. Just by taking a few steps forward with your health, you will change your life. And the difference is I'm here every step of the way. Today, I'm super excited. We have the OG of OGs in the space of insulin resistance and low carb, Craig Emmerich, and his beautiful wife, Maria. Honestly, they were the first of the podcasters that I listened to when I was diving deep into macros and what to eat, and then also how to cook the food to make it taste good, right? Craig has graduated as an electrical engineer, spent the last 16 plus years researching nutrition and working with thousands of clients alongside his beautiful wife. He's an international best-selling author of Keto, the Complete Guide, and the Carnivore Cookbook, which is right here in my office. I should pull it out. I use it all the time. The recipes are mind-blowing. You will not feel like you're missing anything. So Craig, welcome today. I'm super excited to dive into insulin resistance because it is different today versus what it was just 10 years ago. And I want to dive deep into the myths around it and why it's such an important factor in our society today, affecting most everybody, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on, Sarah. I appreciate it. It's always good to chat with you. Yeah, I think, insulin resistance, I think we can dive into a couple different areas, but, root causes is important to really understand how to reverse those root causes. But also, the outcomes of insulin resistance are so wide and varied. Like there's so many things that really at the root have insulin resistance as their root cause. Everything from PCOS to Alzheimer's to, a lot of these conditions that can be traced back to insulin resistance. So it's a very important topic.
I talk a lot about liver, and you got to love your liver. Well, insulin resistance causes fatty liver disease. And I believe over 50% of the United States adults have fatty liver disease. 25% of our children have fatty liver disease. It's not a children's disease. Why is this becoming a thing? And then you wonder, oh, I'm not eating very much food. Why can't I lose the weight like I could 10 years ago? Or I'm working out and I'm not eating very much and I still can't lose the weight. Well, if you've got insulin resistance at the root cause or any of these other factors, you're not going to get anywhere. So let's get into what is the root cause of insulin resistance.
Yeah. So if you look at where it originates and where all of this breakdown of the metabolism originates, it all really starts in our fat cells. And so our fat cells, I heard this statistic or, fact, gosh, probably when I was like in college, and it didn't really at the time, I didn't realize the impact of it. And we all have a certain number of fat cells in our body. Okay. And when we're toddlers, we tend to have this ability to make a lot of new fat cells. And after a certain age, when we're pretty young, we stop making new fat cells for whatever reason. It's just our genetics. When we're young, we make lots of new ones, and we get to a certain age and we just stop really making very many new fat cells, and we just fill up and empty the ones we have. Okay. And at the time I thought, oh, that's an interesting fact. But then, 20 years later, as I'm studying biochemistry, I realize how important that fact is, because it sets all of us up to have what has been coined a personal fat threshold. Mm-hmm. It's a threshold where, these fat cells that we do have, they're kind of like balloons, right? If you blow them up too much, they could burst and destroy themselves essentially. And so they have a protective mechanism on themselves where the fat cell will actually, when it gets too big, it'll reject insulin. It'll say to the body, don't store any more fat in me, I'm full. And it does that by rejecting insulin. So the insulin resistance itself starts in the fat cells. Yeah. And what happens is if you get too many of your fat cells that are stuffed and inflamed and rejecting insulin, the fat that is in the bloodstream or that you're eating has no place to go, because all these fat cells are like, I don't need any more, I'm full. So where does it end up accumulating? In your liver, in your pancreas, around your organs, hanging out in the bloodstream with really high triglyceride levels. That's what ends up happening. And that is insulin resistance. And it all originates in the fat cells. And what's really important about this, understanding this concept, is that this can happen when we've had, a 105-pound woman who was type 2 diabetic. Yeah. Because she didn't have many fat cells. Sorry, my puppy needs to come in here and say hi.
We love dogs.
But if you have, she was type 2 diabetic, insulin resistant, because she had so few fat cells, they get stuffed quickly. And so she doesn't show it on her body with, excess body fat and weight, but she has all the signs. She had high triglycerides, fatty liver, everything. She had she had insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes at 105 pounds. And then you can have somebody else who's 100 pounds overweight, and yet you look at their blood markers, triglycerides are okay, and everything still looks fairly good, right? And that's because they have a lot of fat cells, and they're not all stuffed yet. And so when you look at this, you can really break it down to this, kind of root cause of these fat cells getting too stuffed and inflamed. And that's the root cause of insulin resistance.
So do some people have a genetic disposition to be able to make more fat cells than other people?
Yes, and that's the genetic factor to it too. And this is part of the reason why there's a lot of Polynesian communities who can gain a lot of weight before this breakdown starts to happen. They may have a little bit of a predisposition to be able to make more fat cells, or make enough fat cells when they're young to be able to have enough capacity to gain a lot of weight before this breakdown happens. Other communities, like some of the Asian communities, I think are on the other end of the spectrum. They don't have as many genetically as many of the fat cells that are generated, or aren't able to create as many when they get older, beyond youth. And so they tend to get diabetes at a lower weight. and you'll see this, and so there's definitely genetic factors to it. Everybody's different, and there are exceptions. And we have a great example. Tyler, he was a client, actually went to the same high school as Maria, and was friends with Maria's brother. He came to us, and we helped him just, pro bono. Just we wanted to help him as much as we can, and because he was 645 pounds, and he rapidly lost 100 pounds, and he was doing great. But what I did at towards the beginning is I had him run some blood tests, and we have this test we use that tests fasting insulin, fasting glucose, A1C, triglycerides, HDL. It tests a lot of these key factors, right? And I ran this test on him at almost 600 pounds, and you would think 600 pounds, he's got to be insulin resistant, right?
Yeah.
I believe he is one of the few people out there that can actually continue to make new fat cells as they're needed, as he gets bigger and bigger, even though he's 38 years old.
Right.
His blood markers, his A1C was 5.6. His triglycerides were 70. His fasting insulin was 3.5.
Oh.
This is at 600 pounds.
Wow.
And so it just shows you, okay, here's the exception to the, there's genetically, he's able to create new fat cells. And when you're able to create new fat cells, what happens? You never really get insulin resistant, no matter how much weight you gain, because the fat cells stay small, and you just make new ones and fill those up a little bit, make a new one, fill it up a little bit. And as long as those fat cells stayed happy and small, you didn't get insulin resistance. You didn't have all this metabolic breakdown. And so that, I think, really kind of shows, the proves, if you will, personal fat threshold, by showing that if you were able to keep making new fat cells, you never get insulin resistance.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't want to be someone to continue to make new fat cells, because once they're there, they have the propensity to hold on to more fat. You might shrink them like a balloon, right? But it's still there, ready to hold on to more fat. You can't get rid of fat cells once they're made.
Well, yes and no. Part of that is, generally the concept is you don't want fewer fat cells. You want small fat cells. You want the fat cells to be small and happy, whether that's, at a lower weight or a moderate weight. Generally, the body is those fat cells can get really, really small. Okay. They can empty out a lot. What it does make you is, if you have a lot more fat cells, it's really kind of a buffer, if you will. And this is one of the reasons that liposuction can be bad, because you're sucking out fat cells, and now you're lowering your personal fat threshold. And so you will become insulin resistant quicker with weight gain. And so really that gives you kind of a buffer, right? The more fat cells you have, that's the buffer of, okay, I can gain this much weight before I start getting insulin resistant. Right. If you start removing those fat cells now, you can't gain very much weight before this breakdown starts to happen. And so that's, like Tyler, obviously I'm not saying, healthy at any size. He's got lots of health issues as far as like, the weight on his joints and his heart and organs and all this. And he's working very hard to lose that weight. But it shows you, the power of this, the fat cells to control what's happening in the metabolism.
Right.
As long as those fat cells are nice and small, your body's pretty happy.
So when the cells become resistant to insulin, where is all that food going? The carbs, the protein, and the fats, because you've got your macros. So is the body storing all of it as fat, or what is it doing? And does it matter what the macro is?
I think the macro composition is the most important thing, whether it's for health, for weight loss, all of it. And let's break down the three components. First, let's start with protein, because protein is really not used as a fuel unless it needs to be. Okay, so protein is this amino acid group that is really kind of the building blocks for our body. If you think about protein, your body is constantly in need of protein every single day. You've got hair, nails, skin, autophagy, which is a cellular, breakdown of cells, build new cells back up. All of this requires daily need of amino acids. And, building muscle, if you're trying to build and strength train, you need this constant supply of amino acids, and the body is going to preferentially use those proteins for those building blocks to do all those things. And so it only takes the protein and turns it into gluconeogenesis, when the body needs more glucose. Okay. So if you're eating like a carnivore 0-carb diet, your body still needs some glucose every day. Your red blood cells have no mitochondria, so they can only run on glucose. And some brain neurons, there's a certain amount of glucose that's still needed every day. So your body will take some of that protein you're eating, if you're eating 0-carb, and turn it into glucose to supply the body with that, normal glucose level that it needs. It's really about more of a demand-driven process of, if I need some, I'm gonna turn some in to glucose. So that leaves you with carbohydrates and fat. That's all that's left really from the macros, and those are your fuels. Okay. But there's a really interesting process in the body where carbohydrates and fat, when they're eaten together, the body prioritizes one over the other. And this is something called the Randle cycle. This is where, and there's been some really good studies on this, where they actually mark the carbohydrates and fats and see what's being oxidized or burned in the body. And so what they did was they varied the all they did was vary the carbohydrates up and down in the diet and saw what was being oxidized. Mm-hmm. And the more carbohydrates you had, the less fats were getting oxidized in the body. The less carbohydrates you had, the more fat gets oxidized in the body. So really, carbohydrates just displace fat from being burned. Okay, so let's go back to that meal. Let's say you have a meal with protein and then some carbs and fat in it. Say the carbs and fat are both pretty high. Your body has a certain energy need at that moment. And if you're sitting on the couch, it's not a lot. Your entire blood volume is, if you include all the glucose, free fatty acids, ketones, it's maybe 80 calories that are in your entire blood volume at that moment. So you eat a meal of 800 calories. It's a lot of energy coming in that the body has to deal with, and it prioritizes it. And the way it prioritizes it is really in the reverse order of capacity. So how much capacity do you have on your body for glucose? It's like 1,500 to 2,000 calories stored in your muscle and liver as glycogen. How much do you have for fat? Theoretically, almost unlimited. Somebody like Tyler I just talked about, he's got millions of calories of fat stored on his body. So the body's going to prioritize, and you can also look at it as reverse order of toxicity. Because, while nobody wants high fat in the blood, high triglycerides, high glucose can kill you. If it gets up too high, 84 milligrams per deciliter is a normal amount. That's like 1 teaspoon of sugar in your entire blood volume. So you eat that flurry with 60 teaspoons of sugar in it or something, the body's, that could kill you if it didn't control that rapidly. Right. And so really what happens is it displaces the fat. So the high carb, high fat meal, almost all that fat is just going to get stored away in your fat cells while it deals with the high glucose, burns the glucose, stores the glucose, because that is the priority. That's the thing that could kill you.
That makes sense. And that's why I talk a lot about the fact that you want a lot of muscle on your body, because it absorbs that extra carb. You can actually eat more carbs if you have more muscle, exactly. Right? So it's kind of that carb sponge. But what I've noticed for me personally, I do better on a lower fat, higher carb, still prioritizing protein. And some people, the opposite. They do better on the high fat, low carb, but you don't want both. That's where you get
Exactly.
in danger, right? And that's where all of the processed foods come in, because they've got tons of fat and tons of carbs together. And it's like this bomb that tells your brain, oh my gosh, I love this. This is better than cocaine. I want more, more,
Yeah.
more. And you then start getting insulin resistance and all of these diseases that explode at an exponential rate. And so processed foods have completely derailed our society. Our parents did not have the rates of insulin resistance that we have today. And it never happened in children. I remember growing up,
Wow.
type 2 diabetes was called adult onset diabetes because it was never found in children. And then they had to change the name to type 2 because it's now affecting the
Yeah.
children. So with that being said, what's so interesting is most doctors and even functional doctors do not test insulin levels. They only test the
Yeah.
A1C and the blood sugar, which only tells you part of the story. It's just like when the doctors only test
Exactly.
T4, TSH for thyroid, they're not testing the real numbers, the complete panel that shows the full picture. So, with all of that being said, let's get into the misconceptions about insulin's real role in the body.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to touch on what you're saying there, that, you know, there's really two pieces to reversing type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. The first step is shrink your fat cells. Empty some of the fat out by burning it off. Cut the carbohydrates so that you can burn more fat on the body. Don't eat too much fat in the diet because you want to burn more off the body than you're eating. And as soon as you start shrinking those fat cells, that insulin resistance is going to start to improve. While you're doing this, you want to maintain or grow your muscle. And that gives, as you stated, that gives glucose more places to be stored. So that can help, on the other end of the spectrum. So those two things together are really super powerful in reversing insulin resistance. And both, I think, are really important because especially as we get older, it gets harder and harder to build muscle. And so every gram of muscle that you have now is like a down payment on future vitality and future strength and balance and mobility and everything that's so important as we get older.
Amen to
So
that.
that being said, let's shift gears to that insulin side of things. And here's where we differ a bit with a chunk of the keto and carnivore community on this. And there's a sort of a thought out there, or some people that believe that the primary driver of everything is the elevated insulin. And so back to like insulin resistance, it's eating way too many carbs, and that causes this high insulin, and the high insulin sort of locks fat in the fat cells, so you can't burn it. And we look at it as and the science really proves this, again, going back to the personal fat threshold, that it starts in the fat cells, and the fat cells rejecting insulin that becomes the problem. And insulin itself is just doing a normal functioning pancreas, so you're not a type 1 diabetic. The insulin is just doing its job in controlling the fuels in the bloodstream. And so I like to break up insulin in kind of two components. There's fasting insulin. So that's the insulin level that you have all day long when not after eating food. It's just kind of your basal or your, that baseline insulin level that's there all day. And then there's postprandial. There's spikes of insulin that happen after eating something. And so breaking those two apart, the part of the community that thinks it's all about insulin thinks that as long as you cut those spikes out, everything will be great. You'll just lose weight, and you can eat all the fat you want, and you'll continue to lose weight and that kind of thing. Well, the problem is, we have people, especially when you start talking about personal fat threshold, that are close to their fat threshold, who have very high fasting insulin, like 22, 30. I've seen even higher than that. Fasting insulin all day long. So all day long, their insulin levels never go below 30. If you cut their post-meal insulin to zero, basically fast, they eat nothing, they're still at 30 all day long. That's still very high insulin. And yet these people will still lose weight. They'll still, it's not, to me, the more important thing is lowering the fasting insulin levels, not the spikes. Spikes, well, the big problem with the spikes is that it's the low satiety foods like you described. When you have, sugary drinks or really high carbohydrate foods, what you end up having is that rapid spike. Again, 1 teaspoon is all the blood sugar that your body wants at any given time. And you eat that, flurry or something with, 10 times that, and it's rapidly absorbed because it's just pure sugar. That's a crisis situation for the bloodstream.
Right.
And when that rapid spike in blood glucose gets driven down by a huge spike in insulin, now a rapidly falling blood sugar that probably goes a little too low because the body's not used to correcting. Now you're hungry again. And that's why you can drink 1,000-calorie flurry, and then hour or 2 hours later, you're like, I could eat. But, you eat 1,000 calories of eggs, you're not eating again for a day.
Right.
Because it's different. You don't get that blood sugar. So the really big spikes are bad of insulin. But just normal spikes from some vegetables or some protein or these kind of foods, they're not a problem. It's the fasting insulin is a much bigger problem. And how do you bring down fasting insulin? You shrink the fat cells. Because let's go back to the personal fat threshold. You have these fat cells that are stuffed and they're inflamed, and now they're like, I'm rejecting insulin. I'm not storing any more fat in me. Let's say you get a whole bunch of these on your body. Think of back to the pancreas. What's its job? Keep fuels in the blood at a normal level. Like a thermostat. It controls right in this tight range how much fuel's in the blood. Well, the fat cells aren't taking fat anymore, and you're still eating food, so that suddenly your triglycerides in your blood are way up, right? You've got triglycerides of 1,000. Pancreas is like, I got to get these triglycerides down. And at this level, fat cells aren't taking it. So I'm going to go up here. Fat cells are still not taking it. I'm going to go up here. So fasting insulin just keeps going higher and higher and higher as the pancreas is trying to get this fat out of the bloodstream, right? But the fat cells aren't taking it. So the fat accumulates in the liver, it accumulates in the pancreas, around the organs, everywhere you don't want it, because the fat cells are just not taking it anymore. And that's why the fasting insulin will creep up so fast as you get close to that personal fat threshold.
So you mentioned the liver, and it's this organ that I really focus a lot on because you gotta love your liver. It does everything. It's that detox organ, but it's also what metabolizes proteins and fats so your body can use it. So how does insulin resistance affect the liver, which then causes weight gain? Because people will say, with age, but it's not just age, it's with time, that the liver function is getting worse and worse as you get older. And then all of a sudden I'm eating the same things, I'm doing the same workout, and I can't lose weight. I mean, I know you have heard it. Craig, I've not changed anything and I'm starting to gain weight. I've just put on 10 pounds in a month. Where's this coming from? And I always look to the liver and is it functioning and what's going on? So can you touch on the liver and its role in weight loss and insulin resistance?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The liver does so much for us. It takes, free fatty acids and turns it into ketones for fuel source for the brain when you're eating low carbohydrate. It, back to the Randall cycle, as it's storing off the fat and trying to deal with all this glucose, if it runs out of storage space in your liver or your muscles, which by the way, that 1,500 to 2,000 calories of storage in your liver and muscle as glycogen, a good chunk of that, most of it, is in the muscle. And when it's in the muscle, it's locked away in the muscle. You can't bring it back out. And you only burn that in the muscle with higher intensity workouts. Like if you go on a, vigorous hour-long walk, you probably barely touched your muscle glycogen. And so that is kind of your fast fuel storage in the muscle for sprints, for high intensity workouts and those kind of things. And so what's left is the liver. So you got 400 calories of storage in the liver. that's, rapidly available to the body. And when you max that out, now the body has no choice but to take that excess glucose, turn it into fat, and store it away. So these are a lot of the things that the liver is doing and handling during this process. And guess what? When you get a fatty liver, all that starts to get impaired, and all these processes that the liver's got to do gets impaired. And so it's really important to start, number one is to reverse that fatty liver is going to be your biggest benefit in a lot of these situations. Because the first thing the body, there's actually been some things where they've looked at this, done scans, and one of the first places your body's going to pull the fat is from the liver and the organs that it doesn't want it in. So as you get your macros right and start losing fat, that's one of the first areas it's going to pull it away from, which is good because that'll improve your function and all of that. Beyond that, there can be a lot of factors, that can create that sort of situation. Everything from, changes in hormones and menopause will obviously affect some of those things. There can be external factors, tons of external factors from, toxicity, mold toxicity, environments that can affect those things and affect the liver function, possibly causing weight gain and all that. Excuse me. And, there can be other, medications can definitely cause this, and messing with hormones. And, people see this all the time. They'll take an antibiotic and they'll gain 5 pounds because it's just messing up the microbiome in the body. So there's lots of factors that can cause it. But liver health, I think, can really help improve that situation, either by supporting it or getting the things out of the environment that might be causing it, like, the mold or whatever the environment that might be causing some of these issues.
I did a podcast a little bit ago about the fact that it's not sugar as the number one cause of obesity in children. It's the chemicals. Now, obviously, sugar and the processed foods are a huge factor, but these chemicals that have no calories, no carbs in them, they're disrupting the gut microbiome, the liver, and the body just cannot process what you're giving it. So that is another factor.
It's a huge factor, and I think we underestimate it. It's not just the chemicals in the environment, but the plastics. I mean, it's really shocking how much of these microplastics, there's been a lot of studies coming out on this, and how much of that is proliferated through our bodies. Everything from, human testicles, finding microplastics into heart, in human hearts, finding these microplastics. And one of the recent studies I saw was on the brain. They looked at multiple people, autopsies. They analyzed the brains. They found these microplastics, some of them down to, I think it was like twice the size of a virus. So they're tiny microplastics, but they found in these brains that they analyzed a teaspoon or a spoonful of microplastics in their brains. And that was on average, the brains of the people that had Alzheimer's or dementia had 3 times as much microplastics in their brain as the ones who didn't. I think we're underestimating how much of the microplastics are causing or exasperating these diseases and problems.
I agree 1,000%. And unfortunately, they're everywhere. I mean, they're even in your healthy water bottles that you think you're doing the right thing and you're staying away from the soda and you're trying to eat clean, and it's in the packaging, it's in our hair products, in our laundry detergent, and it's just unfortunate. And so you do have to focus on detoxing some of these things, not just go on a diet, right, of your food. It's the diet of your environmental diet and your air quality, your water, and your just the artificial stuff and the microplastics in our food. So it's all of these things, and we're salmon swimming upstream in this modern world right now. So you can't just go on that diet and work out more anymore. It's all of these things.
I think it's helpful to at least do the big things to help with all these factors. And, looking at plastics, it's, the big factors. Let's start with clothing. Clothing is a big contributor, especially when you start talking about those tiny particles that break off and then they float around and then you inhale them, and all those kind of, is basically dust, right? Is what it ends up getting in your body. But definitely food. So start talking about plastic water bottles, plastic, Tupperware, or things to store your food in, or those big factors that you can get these chemicals out. The nonstick pans, those are the big chunks where let's start there and get those out, and then maybe as you evolve, you can go to smaller things that can help. But I'm a big believer in taking the big chunks first, at least, and then do what you can from there.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it can become overwhelming, so start where you can. So back to insulin resistance and weight loss. What do you tell people who come to you and say, I got to lose some weight, and they're showing insulin resistance? What is your protocol for them?
Yeah, it's again back to macros. So we start with prioritizing protein. Not only does the body need that constant supply of amino acids every day, but when you look at it, the thing about eating in a deficit, trying to lose weight, is that you're eating less food overall than you were, right? And so you need to make sure your body's still getting those vitamins and minerals and things that it still needs, right? So we want to eat the nutrient dense foods, the most nutrient dense foods we can. Well, guess which food has the most vitamins and minerals that you can eat, pretty much? Animal proteins. So by prioritizing protein, you're not only getting the most nutrient dense food with lots of vitamins and minerals, you're also getting those essential amino acids that your body needs to do all these things it needs to do to heal and recover and replace hair, skin, nails, all the things. So prioritizing protein, get enough for your body, which is, there's some general rule of thumbs. We typically say, for a woman at like 5 foot tall, you get like 80, 90 grams of protein at least per day. And then every inch above that, another 5 grams. So if you're 5'4", shoot for 100, 110 grams minimum of protein per day. Then you've got the fuels, right? So now we got the Randall cycle situation going on. So if we want to burn body fat, I'm going to have them dial the dietary carbohydrates down so that now your body's burning more fat as fuel. So we typically cut the carbs to maybe 20 grams per day. And then fat is your dial that now you adjust. Fat's the one variable that's left. And so if you're not losing weight, dial the fat down a little bit, and keep adjusting the fat based on your goals and your situation. But that's the and as far as if the rapid weight loss, we do promote protein sparing modified fast, which is essentially hit your protein goal, little to no carbs, and then quite low dietary fat, like 30 grams of fat for the day, just enough to have your essential fatty acids and absorb fat soluble vitamins and those kind of things. But that's also not something you do every day. This is we use it as a tool, as sort of a replacement for like a extended fast. Some people do extended fasts where they eat nothing for 48 or 72 hours. We prefer this because with extended fast, you tend to lose muscle. And again, the muscle is so important. We don't want to lose that, especially as we get older. Protein sparing modified fast, you get enough protein, so you don't lose the muscle, but you have very low fuels, so you get some of the same benefits as an extended fast. And just like you wouldn't do an extended fast every single day for a month, eat nothing for a month, you also don't want to do protein sparing every day for a month. This is a tool that we say maybe 1 or up to maybe three days a week where you do these protein sparing days, and then regular macros the other days. So that would be probably the fastest way to lose weight.
And I love that you say don't do it every day, because your body's smart. And if you do it every day, it's going to say, okay, we're not getting what I need, so I'm going to lower my metabolic rate. And this is something that we're seeing with people that are on semaglutide or Ozempic, where they are, even though they're on a drug that shuts off their appetite and they're not hungry, it's still a calorie restrictive diet, which is then telling the body, okay, we're going to shut things down. But what's wrong with that is that most people are not focusing on that protein like you're talking about. They're just eating whatever they want, and they're
Yeah.
losing fat and the muscle at the same time. Then you're left at the end with a lower metabolism and less muscle. And yes, you lost some fat, but what happens when you get back into your normal routine? Now you're going to gain more weight back, and it's going to be all fat, because especially as women over 40, it's so hard to gain that muscle back. If you're under 40, women, please hold on to that expensive muscle, build it up as best you can before you get into these perimenopause and menopausal years, because it's no fun. So I love that you focus on the protein. And if you're someone that's eating the Ben and Jerry's and the pizza every day, and you need some fuel every hour or 2 hours to get energy, and you're thinking, well, I can't focus on just protein, I'm going to be starving. You're not. I don't know anyone who binges on ribeye steak. I mean,
and what you're saying about the GLP-1s is so true. Is, you know, the big chunk of metabolic adaptation, or, you know, downregulating of your metabolism, comes from the muscle loss, because muscle burns more calories all day long, and as you lose muscle, your BMR is going to go down, and so you have to eat less to maintain. And with the GLP-1s, you know, if you're just think about, if you're almost slightly nauseated, just don't have any hunger, are you going to go and grab a chicken breast and eat that, or a steak? You're going to grab the chips or the ice cream, right? Like, those highly palatable, you know, type of foods are going to be what you're going to be grabbing for. And those are low protein foods. And so that's what happens, is they don't have hunger. And that's why you see all these studies, they're losing 30, 40, 50% of the weight they lose is muscle. And that just means you got to eat less and less and less to maintain. So that's one of the things that is dangerous about those.
Exactly. Well, Craig, I can't believe we're out of time. I could go on forever with you. And like I said, you were one of the very few people that I started following and learning about all of this. So thank you selfishly. And I know all of my listeners, thank you as well. I know you have some challenges that you do during the year. Why don't you tell people about the upcoming challenge and where everyone can find you?
Well, thank you, Sarah, for having me on. It's been awesome. It did fly by, and yeah, Maria's actually been eating this way for 27 years now, and helping clients for over 20. So it's been a long time. But yeah, we have these awesome weight loss challenges that we do every other month in the beginning of the year, and our last one for this year can be in May. May will be that last challenge. It's incredible what we've seen. Last year, the first year we did the January challenge, we had 1,000 people, and not everybody tracks their weight, but the ones that were tracking, on average, I think lost 10 pounds for the month, and we had 2,500 pounds lost for 1 month. So they're amazing. And that's our next challenge will be in May.
Amazing. And make sure you guys also check out the cookbooks. They're fantastic. They're everywhere. The recipes that Maria comes up with, like the chocolate puddings and the things that look like desserts, but they're all protein. It's just amazing. So super fun to dive into those recipes. Well, thank you, Craig, for everything you do. And everybody, you've got to check them out. They obviously know what they're doing, because they're still around after so many years and have so many followers. So thank you, Craig.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
When I say Craig and Maria were the OGs, they truly were. And I don't know where I'd be without them. So thank you to them. But I wanted to just dive into a couple supplements that you can use. If you're thinking, I can't do that. I can't do a low carb diet. I can't just prioritize protein. My appetite is through the roof. I just want to get on the Ozempic for that easy weight loss. Well, the number one supplement to reach for is accelerated fast. This supplement gives you those ketones for your brain. So you say, oh my gosh, I've got energy. I don't need to eat right now. Yes, I need to drink and I need to take my electrolytes for my energy, but I feel stable and my mind is clear. And it also suppresses those cravings for sugar, fructose, the processed foods. It reduces the oxidative stress and inflammation throughout the body. It increases the ATP in the mitochondria. We are only as energetic or as healthy as our mitochondria, and accelerated fast is one of those tools. It will help you do a little bit of fasting and then choose that healthy wild animal protein that Craig's talking about, and you feel great and you make good decisions, good food choices because you have energy. But what else it's doing is it's helping lower that insulin resistance, so your body feels like, okay, I can release those fat cells. The second supplement is accelerated scalar copper, and you'd be going, well, why would I need copper for fat loss, right? Well, what it does is it effectively hinders the polyol pathway responsible for converting glucose into sorbitol and fructose, and this mechanism maintains a balanced level of uric acid, preventing insulin resistance and weight gain. It also regulates triglycerides and liver fat. It's essential for fat metabolism, and it also acts by inhibiting the PDE3 enzyme, which tends to obstruct fat burning. So without copper, you can't burn your fat. It also improves that fat metabolism. The third supplement is the accelerated iodine. We are all suffering from suboptimal thyroids. Without an optimal thyroid, you're not going to lose that fat because your body doesn't have the energy to do so. You need the thyroid to be working to have that fat oxidation, to let go of the water weight, to increase the brain activity, to lift that brain fog, so many things. Well, accelerated iodine is that iodine, that 4 and 3 molecules in the T4 and T3 of the thyroid hormones to make your thyroid work better. It's also helping detox the cells. So you have an iodo-lipid value on the cell membrane, and that cell membrane is what allows toxins out of those fat cells and the nutrients in, and allows there to be insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. So the accelerated iodine helps with that cell membrane health. It also helps cleanse the blood so the liver can do its job, and it boosts the metabolism, increases fat oxidation, and it helps with protein synthesis and muscle protein synthesis. So you're going to be able to gain the muscles much more quickly. Lastly, I just want to touch on the accelerated liver care. Our livers are being hijacked from all of these toxins, the microplastics, the food additives, the things that we don't even know that our bodies are consuming in its diet, environmental diet, what have you. And accelerated liver care is unlike any other liver supplement. It's 13 very rare herbs that are packed in at high concentrations in a synergistic blend that helps regenerate the liver, detox the liver, rebuild the liver, fight that fatty liver disease, all of the things that are causing insulin resistance. With my own experience from the pandemic and from the spike protein, my liver was hijacked. With that, what did I see? My blood sugar went through the roof, not changing what I ate. And I work out every day, nothing else had changed. Just the fact that my liver was suffering, my blood sugar went up, and that builds in the body the propensity to store fat, right? So you want to love your liver and give it some attention. So those are just some key supplements that you can use during Craig and Maria's weight loss challenges to make things much more effective and easier. I highly recommend you check them out on Instagram, all of their recipes, all of their books, and definitely follow that amazing team. Thanks for listening. Our discussion does not have to stop here. If you're feeling lost in the supplement world, I understand. You can start by getting your free supplement protocol at SaraBantaHealth.com. I will personally put together a protocol just for you. Follow me on social media at Accelerated Health Products and join the free group coaching. There's no downside. You can do it alongside their weight loss challenges. It just gives you that place where you can ask questions, learn from others, and learn what I post on a daily basis to fuel your brain and keep you motivated in moving forward. You can find this podcast at Accelerated Health with Sara Banta on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, E360, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Roku, and over 100 different platforms. And share this podcast with your friends and family. Everybody is suffering from low energy, unexplained weight gain, unexplained insulin resistance, and they need to hear this message. You can use coupon code podcast10 to get 10% off site-wide. Remember, I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so join me next time for more ways to unlock your health potential.